Drive the old Volvo, faded blue and rusty from the salt air of the coast and dented from Nick's misadventures. It smells of his cigarettes. It is the car he had taken. Nick flops like a rag doll, pressed as close to his door, as far away from me as possible. Neither of us speaks. Nick's electric guitar, buttercup yellow with a black pink guard, is in the back seat. Another leftover from his escapades lies beside it. An intricately carved bong made of a glass beaker and meerschaum stem. More, a flashlight, a copy of Rimbaud with a ripped cover, dirty jeans, a half-empty bottle of Gatorade, the Bay Guardian, his leather bomber jacket, empty beer bottles, cassettes, a stale sandwich. He tries a few times to talk me out of it. "This is stupid," he weakly beseeches. "I know I fucked up. I learned my lesson." I don't answer. "I can't do this," he says. "I won't." He turns livid. Glaring at me, he says, "I'll just run away." He is supercilious and condescending, almost savage. "You fucking think you know me? You don't know anything about me. You have always tried to control me." He screams until he is hoarse. In the middle of his ranting, when I notice his slurring, I realize that he is high. Again. Still. "What are you on today, Nick?" There's incomprehension in my tone. An angry whisper comes from him. "Fuck you." I look over to him, look deeply into his impassive face. Nick has many of his mother's handsome features. Like her, he is tall and thin and has her fine nose and lips. He had her fair hair before it darkened as he grew up. Even so, sometimes I have looked into his face, and it was as if he was peering into a mirror. It was not only the physical similarities that I would see. I saw myself hidden in his eyes, in his expressions. It would startle me. Maybe all children as they grow up take on their parents' traits and mannerisms and become more like them. I see my father in me now in ways that I never did when I was young. In the car, however, I see a stranger. And yet he is a stranger whose every part I know intimately. I recall his soft eyes when they were elated and when they were disappointed. His face was when he was pallid from illness, when he was burned red by the sun, his mouth and even each tooth from visits to the dentist and the orthodontist, his knees from when he skinned them and I put on band-aids, his shoulders from putting on sunblock, his feet from taking out splinters, every part of him. I know every part from watching him and living with him and being close to him, and yet driving to Oakland, I look at his sullenness and anger and vacancy, his retreat and turmoil, and I think, who are you? I pull up in front of the Oakland rehab and we walk through glass doors into an austere waiting room. As I inform the receptionist that we have an appointment, Nick stands behind me, belligerent on his heels with his arms folded across his chest. She instructs us to wait. A counselor with black eyes and hair tied back in a long ponytail comes out and introduces herself, first to Nick and then to me. He acknowledges her with a grunt. As instructed, Nick follows her into another room. He hunches. His feet barely move him forward. I flip through an old copy of People, and then after nearly an hour, the counselor emerges and says that she wants to speak to me alone. Nick, palpably seething, takes my spot in the waiting room. I follow the woman into the small office with a metal desk and 2 chairs and a murky fish tank. "Your son is in serious trouble," she says. "He needs treatment. He could easily die from all the drugs he's using. At 18, he is using and mixing more drugs than many people who are much older. He has a dangerous attitude. He doesn't understand that he's in trouble. He's proud to be so hardcore, wears it like a badge. This program isn't right for him. He is bordering on being too old and is at this point resistant to treatment. We see it all the time. He's in denial. It's typical of addicts who maintain and believe that everything is all right. They can stop when they want. Everyone else has a problem but not them. They are fine. Even if they wind up losing everything, even if they're on the streets, even if they wind up in jail or in the hospital. Then what? He has to get into treatment now, whatever it takes. Not here, but somewhere. She recommends other programs. In her somber tone and expression, I can tell that she holds out no great hope. Driving home, the tension in the car builds and then explodes. Nick finally yells, "This is bullshit." I think he might leap out of the car as I speed along the freeway. "It is bullshit," I spit back. "If you want to kill yourself, I should just let you do it." "It's my life," he hoarsely screams. He cries uncontrollably, hysterically, hits the dashboard with his fist, and kicks it with his boots. We pull up in front of the house, but with Daisy and Jasper home now, I don't bring Nick in. I sit with him in the car for another half hour until he has exhausted himself. He is remote, somnolent from drugs and spent anger. His breathing slowed, and then finally, he falls into a deep sleep. I leave him in the car, checking on him frequently. "Will you check on me every 15 minutes? In a while, he trudges inside and heads directly for his bedroom. Jasper and Daisy silently watch as their brother's listless body drifts through the living room. I have to find a program that'll take him immediately, before I lose him. With Nick asleep in his room, I sit down with the kids. I explain as well as I can that Nick is once again on drugs and ill. I say that I am trying to find a hospital or drug rehabilitation program that can help him. I say that kids with a brother or sister or parent with a drug problem sometimes think it's their fault. It's not your fault, I promise. They stare at me, sad and uncomprehending. Nick has a serious problem, but we're gonna get him the help he needs. With help, he can be alright. Nick seethes and rails in and out of a tormented half-sleep, and I recall more rehab programs. One, Allhoff Recovery House in San Francisco, has an open bed. It is a well-respected program recommended by many experts in the Bay Area. A friend of a friend told me that the program turned around the life of her heroin-addicted son. He lives in Florida now, she said. He has a family of his own, he has a job that he loves, and on the side volunteers to help kids with drug problems. Parents of addicts live for encouraging stories like this. When Nick wakes up, I tell him that I have found the program in the city, and he somberly agrees to go in for another evaluation. He grimly follows me to the car. Allhoff Recovery is located in a stately but ancient Victorian mansion with 3 stories, a central cupola, and a handsome wood-paneled lobby, where I wait while Nick goes in for an interview, this time with the director of the 28-day primary program, primary as in primary school. It's the initial step into rehab and recovery. After their session, I am called into the Stark room and I sit in the vacant chair. Nick and I face the director, who is behind the wooden desk. From her manner and the look of wariness in her eyes, I can tell that Nick has been belligerent with her as he had been with the counselor at Thunder Road, but she seems less perturbed. She begins. Nick doesn't acknowledge that he is an addict. Because I'm not. Undeterred, she continues. And he says he's only coming to treatment because you're forcing him to. I know that, I say.